Okay, I'm going to call the regular governing board meeting to order at 7 p.m. Please let the roll call show that all board members are in attendance. And if you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
I second.
All those in favor of adopting the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay.
I would like to explain my vote.
Okay, Mrs. Fisher?
Per policy BGB, adoption of agenda, adoption of policies. It states the second meeting must be at least 14 days after the first meeting or at the regularly scheduled meeting, whichever is later. The proposal shall be presented for discussion and action. It is clear that this agenda is not following our policy. No matter how Mr. Finch spins the reasons why the policies are hidden in consent agenda, or even if he pays an attorney to say it's okay, it is not following our policy. So I will vote no to adopt this agenda because we are using consent to hide information from our community.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. Please let the record reflect it's a 4-1 vote. We will begin with our Safe and Healthy Schools report from Dr. Zerbach.
Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening, we will present our Safe and Healthy Schools report. Our agenda is on the next slide. This agenda is very similar to the agendas that we have had in our previous Safe and Healthy Schools report. We will start off by reviewing where we are at with our metrics for the community level of transmission, both in the broader level and then look closer at the school district level. Also, as we have shown in prior board meetings, what impact we are seeing on our campuses at this time, and then also provide some reminders about our COVID-19 testing opportunities. After that, I'll pass the baton to Dr. Galligan, who will talk to us some about some of the supports that are being put in place for our students during this, which is once again another unique school year. And then we will close with Mrs. Moffitt with some items from Human Resources. Okay, with this particular slide, again, this shows our community level of transmission metrics for our case count, and you can see that our most recent data point shows another decline. We did have 2 weeks ago a slight uptick. You can see at the 279 to the 285, but it seems at this point that hopefully that is not a pattern, that was a single data point, and that hopefully we'll continue to see more decreases going forward. With that said, I still need to remind the board and to the community members who are watching that this still is almost 2.5 times more than what the CDC and our local community health agency define as high transmission, and that is when the case count is above 100. Okay, again, for our rate of positivity, this one, again, you can see has hovered in that mid-13s to 15 range for several weeks in a row, and our most recent data point shows a slight decrease there, but again, very similar to what we've been seeing over the past weeks. On our epi curve for the entire county, you can see here that there is a gradual decline, so not as steep as we would like to see, but it is good news that it is a gradual decline. You can see in the middle there was, again, that slight uptick, and that is reflected in the data that I just showed you for our district community level of transmission, and then it will also likely be reflected in our own COVID-19 dashboard, which I'll show you in a second. But again, the good news here is that we do see, at least even though it's a gradual decline, that it is a decline, and we'll continue to monitor this closely. With our student age group count, again, this is countywide. The county provides the data for different age bands of students, and so when we just select the students that are in the age groups for our schools, you can see that, again, it is declining. Similar to how I have shown you in the two prior slides, the most recent one is more gradual of a decline and not as steep. So hopefully we can get back to more of those steeper declines moving forward. Our dashboard, which we update each Monday at around 4 p.m. We actually had a slight uptick this past Monday. It was our first Monday out of several Mondays where our case count has increased. And again, that likely is due to what we saw in the county's epi curve when we did have that uptick there. So now with the county curve going back down, I do believe that our numbers will likely go back down again, if not this coming Monday, but the following Monday. But it was about a 15% increase from our prior week this Monday. And again, the community can see that by going to the very friendly URL, dvusd.org/dashboard. Okay, impact on operations. This is the third time, I believe, that we have shown this slide. The good piece is that these numbers do continue to go down. As you can see in the first bullet point, our schools are reporting approximately about 44 cases that have been transmitted since our last board meeting. When we convened together, you can see the number of students who are quarantined. As far as the impact for our school administrators needing to make adjustments, you can see again we have still 30 plus schools that are needing to make adjustments during the past 2 weeks. 4 schools that are doing it between 10 and 20 times, and then 2 schools that still continue to do it quite a bit. 13% of our schools, as it says there, have had to adjust due to COVID in the health office, and then 8 of our schools had an adjustment at the campus administrative level due to COVID reasons. The next slide is a friendly reminder slide, as I indicated at the start. Family or community members can go to dvusd.org/COVID testing and see that we continue to do our Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays from 11 to 2 here at the district office right in the parking lot. And as I commented at the last board meeting, we also now have access to home Buy Next Now test kits. And so families who have children who have symptoms, they can inquire with the school nurse if they can get access to one of these tests, if it helps them for convenience reasons. And these tests also support Mrs. Moffitt and her team in HR as we support our staff members with COVID management. And we will continue to receive more of those Buy Next Now test kits. Mrs. Heather Mock has supported us in the past week by securing more of those. And then the county will deliver another shipment likely in the next 10 business days to us to continue our supply both at the school and the district level for that. As for our layered mitigation plan, again, this is a URL that I have frequently made reference to over the past several months, dvusd.org/safety plan. On that current plan that the community can see, there are some points in there where it makes reference to Q1 items that could be updated at Q2. And so given that Q2 is approaching in the next few weeks, we do have a team of leaders, both at the campus and the district level, that are taking a look at that plan and identifying what areas can be updated for Q2. I anticipate having that pretty much locked down by next Monday for internal purposes with our administrators, both again at the campus and district level. And then as the second bullet point indicates, the current plan is to, on October 8th, update that safety plan on the community website so that our community members can see what changes may be implemented for Q2. So stay tuned for that one. And I will, of course, report to you in our October Safe and Healthy Schools report what changes are taking place with that plan. Okay, and with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Galligan, if you could take the baton from me. Dr. G.
Thank you, Dr. Zarabak. We know when students are out due to quarantine that supporting them during the days they are out is a shared responsibility for our teachers to provide Canvas content aligned to the classroom learning and our students to engage in that content daily while they're out on quarantine or isolation. Many schools offer opportunities to meet teachers through Zoom before school, during prep, or after school while out on quarantine. This particular slide is for K-8, our K-6, K-8 in middle schools. Equally important is how we support students when they transition from a quarantine back to their classroom. Many times, schools have put structures in place so students are able to reassess, redo, learning progressions, learning tasks, and assessments until mastery is reached. Some of our elementary schools have their dean of students and counselors attempt to touch base with students upon their return from quarantine or exclusion, just to do that check-in and follow up once they get back into their brick-and-mortar classrooms. Other supports at our K-8 campuses that they have put in place include teachers exempting some of the non-essential work, focusing on the most essential skills and/or tasks, offering open lunch and recess time for students to come in for support, especially at that intermediate level. Checking in during independent work time before school, which is right before 8:30 to 8:45, just depending on when the schools start, when students enter the classroom or are waiting for the bell to ring. Shifting Tier 2 or RTI based on what they are missing and or show they have most need for. As you see on this slide, our K-6, K-8 middle schools are using their Tier 2 time to intervene for students who have academic needs for any number of reasons, including being quarantined. One significant change this year was to the master schedule at K-6 schools that gives us the opportunity to address significant academic remediation in Tier 3 as an embedded time within our normal ELA and math instructional time. That is different for us, and it helps us reach all students in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Gary, if you go to the next slide. High school remains a complex and challenging environment to ensure we intervene for students who have academic gaps or loss. Again, for many, many reasons, one of which is students who are out on quarantine. All high schools will have their Tier 2 data compiled and have either started or are starting Tier 2 intervention in early October. Students whose grades dropped due to quarantine are identified and will be included in Tier 2 supports at each campus. Time is set aside weekly for specific intervention, and each of our high schools has a different name for it, but it does happen across each week. In addition, we will have extended semester opportunities for courses this fall and again in the spring. This intervention gives students whose semester grade is not too low to have an extra week or two at the end of the semester to help them attain the credit they may have lost. Counseling support and teacher tutoring are available in many instances across each of our high schools as well. We know that intervention and intervening for children who have academic gaps, whether it's they come to us with academic gaps or because of quarantine they have lost a chunk of learning, is most important at any level. It is not an easy thing to address, but I can assure you that each of our administrators and each of our teachers are working closely with the structures they have on place and the students who have been identified for quarantine. The thing I can always ask our parents to do is to reach out to their teachers and their administrator if they are having challenges when their child is out for quarantine. Thank you.
Good evening, President O'Brien, governing board members. Tonight, I'm bringing to you just some repeat reminders as we continue to get questions around these areas. First off, as always, all of our employees do need to report to covidreport.dvusd.org if they have COVID-related concerns. Additionally, there has been no change since our last announcement regarding the vaccine mandate that was announced by President Biden. OSHA has not yet published any rule or emergency temporary standard. Moving to the next slide. We'd also like to continue to recruit health office workers, anyone in the community that is looking to support our campuses, or if we could beg you to come in and help us out. That would work for us as well. So anyone in our community that does have a medical license and would be willing to support us in any way, we would love to talk. And also a reminder to our community that if there is someone out there that does not currently have a sub-certificate, we could support them in that endeavor. And we also are taking classified substitutes that can support us in classified positions and certified positions. And we'd also like to report to the board that we did meet with ESI last week. They are the employer for our certified substitutes, and we contract with them. They do conduct employee satisfaction surveys to their substitutes specifically for our district, and our substitutes are currently reporting that they're very happy working in all of our campuses right now. So we are pleased to hear that and want to make sure that we report that out so that anyone that is looking to have a substitute opportunity would see that it is a good thing and a happy thing to do.
Thank you, Mrs. Moffett. And so with that, I probably would just add, President O'Brien, that we will look forward to the county health webinar this Thursday. There has been some recent movement on the vaccine front for families of children between the ages of 5 to 11. We know that Pfizer has submitted to the FDA. And so we anticipate county giving us some update as far as a timeline for when that may become available for families. And then the second piece to the vaccine as well is we do know that the director of the CDC has informed that educators would be eligible for the booster if they would like to take that. And so again, I expect that the county health will provide some updates this Thursday on that as well. And then we would obviously work to communicate that out to staff and then to parents as well once more information comes in and once it's more concrete. And so with that, we would love to field questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zurbach. Questions? Mrs. Paperman?
So my question is, we had 1,224 quarantined staff of students during the last 2 weeks. Is there a possibility if they had a Binax now test kits, would the numbers lower eventually?
No, the quarantines need to do their quarantine period. They can use the Binax kits to test out early of quarantine for that.
Okay. Another question is with the Tier 2 intervention. So teachers, besides their teaching, they're planning teaching during for the week, they're also doing intervention separately. And the question is, do they have enough time for planning time to do the interventions to be implemented in the classroom?
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, the amazing thing that we have available to us is our PLC teacher collaboration. And for Tier 2 intervention, how we have worked for this year is our collaborative teams will look at Tier 2 intervention. And of course, they're looking at student data and they're looking at the trends across the students that they bring to the team. And they are identifying and suggesting this is the intervention for Tier 2 time that would be effective for this group of kids who have this same learning gap.
Okay.
So that is happening in our teacher collaboration time.
Okay, so they do have some time that they're able to plan and collaborate and create those lessons, interventions to be implemented in the classroom.
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, the amazing benefit of our PLCs and teacher collaboration is that now it's not simply on me as an individual teacher. I have the teacher team and we talk together. Now this is, for many of our schools, something that has happened in the past, and for some of them it is a new process this year, but it is truly the idea of together we can accomplish more in intervening for children than we can individually.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. Speaking of tier 1, 2, and 3, Dr. Galligan, could you just take a minute and maybe give an explanation or some examples of what tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions look like for parents so they understand what that term is and what their students might be receiving, please?
Absolutely. President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, in Deer Valley, we, over the last 6 years, have followed something called multi-tier systems of support, MTSS. Within multi-tier systems of support, we address Tier 1 first best instruction that all students receive, and that is their core instruction. Then we have Tier 2 intervention. Tier 2 intervention has had many iterations over the years, but it really does solidly remain with the classroom teacher. And Tier 2 intervention is for children who just need a little more time or a little more personalized attention for something that was just taught or taught recently. And then we have Tier 3 remediation. So you notice Tier 2 intervention, Tier 3 remediation. Tier 3 remediation is for children who have had some significant gaps and are at least one grade level below in the academic course that they're working in, the lessons that they're learning. And so that remediation is far more intense. And the goal is to really intervene at Tier 2 so there are not as many children who need that Tier 3 remediation. So when we can ensure that all students who need Tier 3 are able to receive it without being pulled away, or all students who need Tier 2 intervention without being pulled away into other places, the better opportunity they have for all 3 tiers to help them be where they need to be at grade level content.
Perfect, thank you. And then Dr. Galligan, just a request, when we meet in October, we won't have that data really yet because grades will have just closed. But when we meet in November, would you be able to provide us with an update as far as what our DNF students are at, and then where we are for our high schoolers at about, I guess, their mid-semester? That would be great, thank you. And then Dr. Zerbach, there seemed to be quite a bit of, I guess, misunderstanding with some of the data that you shared last board meeting. And so I want to make sure that parents and community members that are listening understand this data. So on this Monday's report, we had 142 positive COVID cases. Last Monday was 122. And 44 of those cases were cases that we know were transmitted within our DVUSD schools, correct?
President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, some of those would be, remember that 44 is over the past 2 weeks.
Yes.
So that's since our last board meeting. So some of those would be, but some of those could have been from the week prior as well.
Yes, but over those two, because I know that some of the kids from, or numbers from 122 and the 142 are the same.
Correct.
But
It could be. Yes, that
yes.
is true.
So-
Because it's an active case count.
I think
yeah.
I think that people, I think because last board meeting it was like 126 was the count that or something like that, 126 or 160 was the count that we know was transmitted within schools. And I think that some people were thinking that was only that we only had 160 cases. But we know that those cases were the ones that developed with kids that were already on quarantine. So I just want to make sure that's clear and people are understanding how those numbers are given. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ordway?
Thanks again, everybody, for compiling your information. So just go over one more time the amount of quarantines that we had in the last 2 weeks.
Yes, President O'Brien and Ms. Ordway, let's go back to the impact slide. So in response to your question, approximately 1,224 students since we last came together had a quarantine administered to them.
Okay. And again, if we had required indoor masking, would that number be drastically lower?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, if all the students were wearing masks, yes, that number would be lower.
Okay, thank you. But not just like by a few percentage. I mean, it would be drastically lower?
It likely would be substantially lower.
Okay. So we have our teachers trying to manage the children that have been in and out of a classroom. We have our students that have been in and out of classrooms. And do we have an idea, Dr. Galligan, of how many of those students are in Tier 2 right now, or will be?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, I don't have that information at my fingertips, but we can certainly gather that. For the high schools, it might be a little bit down the road as far as not this week, potentially next week or the following week.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I'm just wondering, you know, how much can they actually make up, and how much can a teacher teach to so many different kids that are in so many different places, not because of their ability to learn, but their ability not to have been in a classroom. So then we have, oh, well, and we talked about having a difficulty in attracting health workers, and most health workers are reticent to work in an environment that is not following a best practice. So that might be one of the reasons, because we're not requiring indoor masking. Dr. Galligan, there has been the question of why Zoom is not occurring, because, quote unquote, from certain individuals, it's really easy to do the Zoom at the same time. Could you explain that?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, last year was the word that's used often is unprecedented. We made the decision to have our high schools. It started originally with our honors AP IB courses be able to Zoom during in-person instruction for their online students. It was less than successful for many of the students who were online. It is not easy for our teachers to instruct effectively with kids in front of them and manage those students, as well as our students online and manage those students. I will say that our teachers, and it was far more teachers than just our advanced high school teachers, our teachers did the very best that they absolutely could because they care so desperately about the success of their children. But when we look at the data, many of our children either did not take us up on Zoom. If they were Zooming, they didn't participate in submitting work. And that was not all. Please understand, that was not all students. But the wear and tear on both teachers, our students online, and our students in person was high. And last spring, we made a commitment to our teaching force to do our very best to provide as much as we could through our learning management system, which is not perfect. Don't get me wrong. It is not perfect. In-person instruction is where we need to be. But we do have a structure for students who are out on quarantine. Could it be better at all levels? Absolutely. Could it be better at high school? Absolutely. But we do have it, and it is available. And if our children are able to partner with us so that our teachers put content on that learning management system and our kids do their very best to participate in it, and if they don't understand it, to reach out for either an appointment or a meeting with the teacher, then we'll do our best. And again, as I said before, if it is not working out, our kids and our parents need to reach out first to the teacher or teachers, and then to the administrator, because we all want our kids to be as successful as they can be when they are on quarantine. But the reason, and I'll get back to the main point, the reason we are not requiring our teachers to Zoom for our kids that are home on quarantine, online, and with their kids that are in person is that we did not find significant success last spring, and we made a commitment to our educators as well.
I guess I appreciate all of that information. It just sounds, I guess, when you're sitting in a room, for some people, that it would be like really easy for a teacher to Zoom. And I'm glad that you went over the reasons why it's not easy. It's not like, you're live streaming the board meeting and you get everything out of it because you are requiring that individual attention. I have one more. So when you have Dr. Z, when you have this committee that we're going to have to update and redo our COVID safety plan, not COVID safety plan, but our health and safety plan, I'm hoping that we're going to be looking at benchmarks and numbers that would perhaps require indoor masks for whatever period of time that would be. And since you are going to be meeting with Maricopa County Health, if you could perhaps, at least look at what those numbers might look like, because to me, whether or not people are mask believers, when we have 1,000 children out of their classrooms, that's hurting kids to me. And there's so many things that they can't make up as good as we're trying to be. There's just things that, they're not going to be able to make up. So if that could be included in the planning process, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher?
The main question that I received after the last meeting was, how do you know they contracted COVID on campus? Are those students, can the district guarantee that those students did not go to church, the store, the playground, outside? Can you guarantee that they were 100% quarantined at home, and that's how you know they got infected at school?
I'm sure President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, in terms of a guarantee, no. That question, that's obvious, that there's no 100% guarantee that we could say someone got it here versus somewhere else. What we do look at is what is most likely the situation based off the information that we receive from parents when we talk to them. And so we look at we utilize the processes that County Health has given to us in terms of finding out from parents, has there been exposure outside of the school setting in another environment? And so when we go through that process and do not identify any other areas where exposure would have occurred, then we likely know that that's where it occurred. And many times as well, again, due to the close contact, you will see that when it spreads, it may spread to the students that are in that pod that are there. And so there is a high degree of likelihood, perhaps I would say, but it is not a 100% guarantee.
And then the second thing was, we talk about masks. If they were wearing masks, you said when Ms. Orway asked that they would be less likely to be quarantined. Is that because that would be our choice, is to not quarantine them if they were both wearing masks?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, as you know, in the from the previous updates, it is one of the provisions from the CDC and County Health that if the student who is COVID positive is wearing a mask, and if the other students who are identified as close contacts who are wearing a mask, then those students would not need to be quarantined from the county during the school day, and meaning that we would not have to exclude them. And so, again, in response to Ms. Ordway's question, that answer would likely be yes, it would be lower.
But it would be due to the masks wearing, not having anything actually to do with COVID itself. Just
Again, it would
They're
be
both
due
working.
to the provision that the CDC and Maricopa have stated as the exemptions. There are multiple exemptions, as you know, from being excluded in school, and that is one of the exceptions.
You said you were having a meeting with the Department of Health coming up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I was going to ask at the end in my board update, but one of the things that parents who have been contacted this week regarding their children being quarantined, they have asked the Department of Health why they were quarantining their children. And the Department of Health has stated to them that they are not quarantining their children. They cannot quarantine their children, and it is the district. So I would appreciate it if you asked that question, because that's what the Department of Health has told several parents. And so there's a lot of parent concern about that out there.
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, I was not on those phone calls with those parents when they made those calls, so I do not personally know what was communicated to them. I can tell you what has been communicated through the county health webinars for the past year, or actually year and a half now, is the piece again that the county does require the quarantine and requires schools to exclude. And that is public information that has been put out
I'm just asking
by
if
the
you asked
county
the
attorney
question,
and the folks. Yep.
because that's what the parents have reported, that they've been told something different. I'm not arguing with you.
Sure.
I wasn't on those calls either.
Oh, I can assure you those questions are asked every webinar that
Well,
the county has.
But I would ask directly, are you telling parents? Because either, I mean, I don't want to call a parent a liar, but I don't want to, when our parents are told that, it makes us look like we are the ones doing it, which I do believe is the case. But you all keep assuring us that it is not our choice. So just please ask the question and let us know.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Zerbach, Dr. Galligan, and Mrs. Moffett. I appreciate you putting all that information together for us and answering all the questions. We are now going to move on to call to the public. Mrs. Ordway is going to call a few names, so if you'll step up to the microphone, that would be great.
Amy Leonard, Trina Toronto, and Vicki Lacey. The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic, handed to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary, to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items that are not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
If you please state your name for the record, and then your time will begin.
I'm Amy Leonard. My daughter is a student at Mountain Ridge, and she has been exposed to COVID twice now in the month. I want to tell you that I am immunocompromised. I'm not wearing a mask because I'm 6 foot from people, which I'm fine with. I'm also vaccinated. My daughter's vaccinated too. However, there are breakthrough cases that are happening. She's been exposed twice in 1 month. Luckily, she's not been quarantined. But again, I am immunocompromised. Her grandmother, my mom, has cancer, stage 4, is going through chemotherapy right now. And she's very close to her grandma and her grandpa. And my grandma does not want to, or my mom does not want to not see her granddaughter. That is the joy in her life right now. And so we are allowing them to see each other. And it would just be devastating to lose my mother. Sorry, I'm nervous. My daughter's grandma, because of a lack of a mask mandate. And the doctor here has even stated that we have proof. It's a global scientific proof that masks work. We cannot deny that. If you deny it, it's something personal that you have something against something. I don't know what it is, but this is global scientific proof. You can look at last year at the cases compared to this year. And no matter whether these students catch this at church or home, I don't care where they get it from. The thing is I don't want them coming to school and spreading it to my daughter and to my family. That is what's important here. It doesn't matter where they get it from. I heard that mentioned. It does matter. So we need to really think about, we're talking about human beings here, not talking about money. I know that the governor has made it tough for the schools to get funding. I guarantee you that if you make a mask mandate and ask the parents to step up, we will donate to the school. We will make a difference and we will help bring up that funding that the school needs because lives are more important than money. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Trina here? Okay, we will move on to our third speaker.
And our third speaker is Vicki Lacey.
Vicki Lacey, if you will state your, sorry, did I say that wrong? Vicki. Yes, Vicki Lacey, state your name for the record, and then you will, your time will begin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very curious. Is it my
Will you step,
understand-
sorry to interrupt, will you step a little bit closer to the mic so it'll pick you up? Thank you.
Is it my understanding that we have approximately 32,000 students and faculty and staff within the Deer Valley School District? Is that close? And so then there is 44 students that had COVID that were tested, and over 1,200 quarantine. So my question is about the quarantine. What is this all about? Because what I'm finding out, I talked to a lot of parents. What I'm finding out is that they get a letter that their kid is going to be quarantined, and it's days after the contact. I mean, the hypocrites and all of this stuff that is going on, we have to question. We have to question whether or not this is all working. And I would like to remind everyone, it doesn't make a difference if it's the President of the United States. It doesn't make a difference if it's a judge, a lawyer, an Indian chief, a doctor, or anyone. No one has the right to dictate anything medical to anyone's children. And doctors have a license to practice medicine, not to demand medicine, not to demand anything. We need to start living our lives. And it needs to start, why not the Deer Valley School District? The CDC, what is the CDC? The CDC is a consulting company. Those health departments, they have no right over our children. And who in the world wants to listen to that? And if you want to send your child to school with a mask, then do so. You want to get your child vaccinated? Do so. But are these quarantines, are these children, are they absent from school? Isn't it like 15 days and they're truant? Are they being absent? Is it considered an absence if they are quarantined for that many days? I mean, these are all questions that I have. We need to look at this. Do you know, I worked in healthcare when H1N1 was huge. Who was our president? President Obama. Do you know how he got rid of it? He told the media to stop talking about it and to stop testing for it.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is done.
Are we ready to go to number 5?
Move on to consent agenda.
All right, I would make a motion that the governing board approve consent agenda items 5A through 5U.
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay.
Again, I would like to explain my vote. I'm going to vote nay because hiding policies in the consent agenda where the public cannot comment on them, and they have not been available for comment, is against our policy, and honestly, it's disrespectful to our community and to anyone who these policies would apply to.
The motion passes 4-1. Action item 6A, please.
I would make a motion that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Is there any discussion regarding this item? Seeing none, a call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Did you vote, Mrs. Fisher? Okay, I just didn't hear you, that's why I was double checking. Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
I would ask that the governing board approve one GPA contract with DLR Group as the architect for the modernization of the high school media centers.
I second.
That would be Jim.
Mr. Miglerino.
President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we are pleased tonight to share with you another exciting project as part of our 2019 bond initiatives. This is the first step in terms of the board involvement, which is to identify an architect. We have spoken with several firms, but due to the national presence of the DLR group, as well as their previous work in the district on several projects, we are recommending they join the team that will start to work on the design of modernizing our high school media centers. They have been involved in similar projects throughout the country, and the first step would be the board's decision this evening to award a contract to them. What we intended to accomplish with this project is to convert the media centers into a more commons area on all 5 of our high schools. We had reserved $1 million at each of the 5 high schools for this project. We believe the majority of the money will be spent on furniture improvements, to give you some sense. So we're not intending to add square footage to the media centers, but just make them more, I'll say, student-friendly for each of the 5 high schools. There will be a work group or work team that consists of members from each of the 5 high schools that will help with the design, pending the board's decision this evening to name the architect. And there will be a future board involvement in the determination of the general contractor that will perform the work once we know what the design looks like, and we can work towards some pricing for the actual scope that gets determined through the design meetings. We intend to work on the design this school year and develop a schedule that would have us potentially make these improvements over the upcoming summer, so the summer of 2022, in hopes that they would be available during the 22-23 school year, upcoming school year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Any questions, board members? Mrs. Fisher?
Do we know if one GPA has any affiliation with the construction project in front of Sandra Day O'Connor?
President O'Brien, if I heard the question, Ms. Fisher, if I heard the question correctly, do they have any involvement in the
In any way, shape, or form, yes. Do we know?
construction in front of Sandra Day O'Connor? I don't know the answer to that. In terms of, are you speaking of the retail or the apartments and retail?
Yeah, the whole area. Do we know if there's any affiliation whatsoever of one GPA with that project?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I know the developer, the Peterson Group is the developer. I do not know. One GPA is a procurement
Right,
firm.
but do they have any affiliation or anyone project?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Nay. The motion passes 4-1. So we will move on to our preview items. The first one is, we have, I'm sure, a policy first reading presentation. And the first one is Mrs. Mock.
Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, and guests in present and online. Finance Department has two first reading policies for you this evening. I think we have four total for a first reading, and we will start with policy DIE, audits and financial monitoring. The 2021 legislative session brought about House Bill 2018, which added language to Arizona Revised Statute 15914, which modified policy DIE. We already previewed this policy back in May when we asked the governing board to accept the FY or fiscal year 20 financial audit. The language presented in House Bill 2018 is very simple. Governing board shall publicly accept all audits and compliance questionnaires by roll call vote. So we will continue that this year and just memorialize that in policy through adding this statement to policy DIE. And I will take any questions about this policy.
Any questions, members? Okay, Mrs. Mock, you can move on to Governing Board Policy DJ Purchasing.
Very similarly to policy DIE, policy DJ Purchasing was modified through the 2021 legislative session, this time through House Bill 2120, amending Arizona Revised Statute 15-342. And basically, the policy is just adding this statement that memorializes that the governing board may provide food and beverages at school district events, including official school functions and trainings, as allowed by the Arizona Constitution and policies of the Department of Education. And so in line with the amendment to ARS 15342, we recommend accepting this language as presented by ASBA. And I will take any questions on this policy as well.
Any questions? Hearing none, we will move to preview item C, Governing Board Policy GCF, Professional Staff Hiring, which is Mrs. Moffett.
Good evening, President O'Brien, governing board members. Human Resources does recommend that the board adopt both GCF, professional staff hiring, and second to that, GDF, support staff hiring, due to recent statutory changes. Won't significantly change our practice on our professional staff side because we do already review our hires with ADE, including their certification and their IVP fingerprint clearance cards. What will be different is this will require us now to look for our classified hires, at least those that the state recognizes as needing an IVP fingerprint card. So they are currently identifying which groups those will be, and we are working with ADE now as they're in the process of building a platform to support this so that we can begin implementing it right away.
Are there any questions? Mrs. Fisher?
I do understand that we are not required to do this for individuals that are not identified as having to have that fingerprint clearance. But in light of the recent situations we've had with individuals who take liberties with children and the lack of accountability, I would really expect that our district would consider going above and beyond and have this be for all employees, regardless of their status for fingerprint clearance.
So President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, just to be clear, all of our employees in our system are fingerprinted, but not all employees in our system require an IVP fingerprint clearance card. That is changing. We have begun the process already of transitioning all of our classified hires into an IVP fingerprint clearance card. So we don't have a specific timeline yet identified when all will transition, but we are in the process right now because we agree with your statement.
I would ask that it be put in policy. I don't know, since the policy will probably be shoved in consent and we don't follow, it is what it is, but that would be my request.
Also, to be clear regarding the policy, whether or not we as a district choose to require all of our classified employees to be on an IVP fingerprint clearance card, that does not necessarily mean that ADE will require us to report all of those employees. Our understanding at this time, and it could change, it is the employees that they identify or the groups that they identify. But of course, we always can check if any of our employees are required to have an IVP fingerprint clearance card, whether or not they do have something that is against their record. But again, this policy won't necessarily require us to report those in the system to ADE. Two different things.
And these policy changes, all four of them tonight, are being updated due to statutory changes that were made during the most recent legislative session. Yes. Okay. And Mrs. Moffett, when you get a better idea of when we might be getting closer to that date and we have a full implementation date, maybe we could get that in a Friday update so we know as well. Thank you very much. All right, we will move on to governing board reports. Mrs. Fisher.
For this board meeting, I didn't ask if any parents had anything for me to bring forward, because it doesn't appear that this administration or this board is actually concerned about what these parents have asked me to bring forward. As a result, many parents have indicated they are looking for charter schools or other options to educate. I have heard a lot in the past 2 weeks about the trauma being caused by students being quarantined, the loss of learning, since the work is either not being uploaded or the kids have no understanding. There's no actual teaching occurring. When I brought it to Mr. Finch's attention, his response was simply that it's the teacher's fault and they need to contact their teacher if that is the case. Parents are also being told, like I said, by the health department that it is the district and not the health department requiring the quarantining. So I can't say like I said, I wasn't on the calls. The second thing that has been a major issue this week has been student safety in regards to bullying and violence. As I cannot state details for the confidentiality of the student and the parent, I just want to be clear that this is not new. And it needs to be addressed for once in this district. It really needs to be addressed. Back when my middle daughter, who is now 26 or about to turn 26, was in elementary, there was a group called the Mamas and the Papas. It was a family of students who ranged from my daughter's age, a little bit younger than her, all the way up into high school. And this little group of kids were somewhat of a gang, and they ran the school. They ran the elementary, they ran the junior high, and they ran the high school. It was brought to the governing board's attention at that time, and it was ignored. It was brought to the principals. It was brought to the assistant principals. In fact, one of the students who this little gang engaged with, they cracked her skull. Her parents had no recourse. They just wanted away. And so they took their child and they moved away from Arizona. Another student sued us. I don't know what the outcome of that case was, but that young lady, I don't think she won against us, but she did win against one of the students that was in that family. She still comes to my house occasionally, and she says she would love to speak to Deer Valley and say the horrible impact that it has had on her entire life. There are individuals who were on this board then that are still on the board, and she has choice words for them, which is why I've never brought her forward. But even as recent as when my son was in school, I had recordings of where students were bullying him. And you don't always speak up because you don't want your admin. I loved my admin at Deer Valley High School, and I know they cared for my son a lot. But there was a para next to my son as he was being bullied, and nothing was done. And so I worked through it with my son without reporting it because I did not want admin to be hurt that they thought maybe I wasn't doing the right, that I thought they weren't doing the right thing. But I'm just asking that we figure out what's going on, because it's not just our kids. And you know, this parent is debating whether to bring her child back or just keep them out and find a charter or whatever it is they're going to end up doing. But it doesn't change the fact that a young individual is not safe at school, does not feel safe at school. A threat is made, and a threat was ignored. And I just hope we do a better job at stepping up and addressing it. And I don't know what else to say beyond that.
Mrs. Paperman?
I did have a small group of parents that they had concerns that Deer Valley has critical race theory implemented within the district. I let them know that we do not have critical race theory within the district. I also let them know to please you visit the district if you want to look at the curriculum, if you have any questions, and if they do find something, please let the governing board, because we did not vote for critical race theory within our district. One of the things that Ms. Fisher brought was the consent agenda. I know, I review it, I look at it, we do have lawyers, we do review, and I believe in transparency, so I believe that, yes, the parents and community members should also be involved to look what we're doing. We're trying our very best to keep our district moving forward, to support our students, to support our staff. If we need to have a better process, to present to the community what we have on the agenda, that'll be great, because then we can get those feedbacks. I believe that, that everyone should be involved in the decision making, and we all need to look, not just myself, because I do my research, and I may not see the same what other board members may see. So we need to make sure that, there's transparency, and parents, please go to the district. If you have any questions, ask for, if it's critical race theory, what do you have it? Show it to me. If they don't have it, don't go by rumors because you hear. Take actions and go to the district and talk, with the district personnel so they can. And please, if you find something, or no, thank you.
Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. Last week, we had the opportunity to go to the groundbreaking of Elementary School 32. It was a really great ceremony. The student body president from Sandra Day O'Connor was there and gave an excellent speech on his journey and his experience growing up through DVUSD schools and how that's preparing him for the next generation, and how he was excited to see another school community and culture being built up in the neighborhood where his younger cousins are going to go to school. So that was a really neat perspective to listen to. We also got to meet some community members who live in the area who came over to be witness to the groundbreaking ceremony, and they were so excited that they finally have a school that's coming to their neighborhood. So that was just a great morning. So very appreciative for that. I had a social media post sent to me that asked, and I was asked whether or not these things were true because it was posted by one of our board members. It said, in DVUSD schools, do you want what they are seeking? Do you support comprehensive sex ed, critical race theory, open use bathrooms regardless of actual gender, anti-constitutional teaching, removal of parental control, school control of all decisions for your child, students put out of school with no real education opportunity? And so I wanted to take a second and just address those things because those have also been said that I am in support of those things specifically. And so the district obviously does not have sex education. We have what is involved in our Arizona state standards for 9th grade for health. That is a requirement for us to teach. Parents can always look at the curriculum first. With the legislation that was just passed, we cannot have sex education in the school without parents knowing about it and then opting in for it. And it cannot be taught to students younger than 5th grade. So if somebody is telling you that we have comprehensive sex ed or that this board wants comprehensive sex ed, that is a mistake. That is not true. The second part, critical race theory. I hope that by now we've gone over this enough over and over and over again that we don't have critical race theory in Deer Valley. I understand that the judge overruled the constitutionality of the legislation because it was attached to a budget writer bill. So that is not the way that you pass legislation that way. But still, that is something that our district does not have in our curriculum. We've gone over this several times. It's not something that this board is interested in bringing into curriculum. So if you are hearing that we have critical race theory or that this board wants to have critical race theory, that is inaccurate. The next part, open use of bathrooms regardless of actual gender. That is not something, we've had this discussion, the last board had this discussion a little bit, and what was said was that if we have a transgender student, that there is a conversation that is had with that student and those parents and the administration to come up with a safe way for the student to use them. And there happens to be a transgender student at my child's school, and I asked, one of my kids, where does that child use the restroom? And they said they go to the nurse's office. So that is what that student and that administration and that family have decided is the safest way. And from the discussion that we had, I don't know, a year and a half ago, that was the general consensus was that our executive cabinet team brought that up, that is always a possibility for those students. Anti-constitutional teaching, without getting too political, but I do know the affiliation of my board members, the political affiliation, and none of us believe in anti-constitutional teaching. So that goes against our foundational political beliefs. Removal of parental control. As a parent in the district, I would never want the district to make parenting decisions on behalf of myself for my students. So I've said it over and over again in the board meetings that whatever policies I pass hit my family and my kids first, and I have to answer to them first and foremost. So no, I'm not trying to remove parental control. I believe that parents need to be an active and involved member of the school because if they aren't, then nothing works. And we do see, we have schools where there is very low parental participation. And in those schools, the students suffer. And the district does have to provide different supports, but to kind of fill in the gap. But parents are a crucial part in our student community, in our district community. Students put out of school with no real education opportunity. I know that every student's education experience is going to be different, and you do get what you put into it a little bit. But since I had a senior graduate last year, I think I can speak to it a little bit. He entered college with 32 credit hours already for towards his college education, and he's on a scholarship. So he really valued the education that he had in Deer Valley, and I know that his teachers loved him, and I know that his teachers cared about him as a person, not only academically, because I would get emails checking in to make sure that he was doing okay. When I'm on campus or I see them around, they ask still, how is he doing? How is college? So I am confident that we graduate lifelong learners. And again, I know that my student story is not the same as every student's story, but I was also a very active and involved parent, and I pushed my child to make sure that he did everything he needed to do in order to graduate. And I know that that's not the same story as everybody, but I just wanted to put those things to rest. I've also heard that I'm a very liberal Democrat, and I am trying to bring my liberal thoughts to Deer Valley and take away parental control and all of that. I'm not a very liberal Democrat. I'm a moderate, which I think is great when you're on the school board and it's not supposed to be political, because I can easily see both sides. And I have to represent both sides of the political spectrum, the Republicans and the Democrats and the Libertarians and the Green Party and independents. And so sometimes those ideologies and those thoughts all come together and we can agree on something. And sometimes those ideologies and those thoughts are vastly, vastly different. And we see that with COVID. But my job as a board member is not to, grandstand up here and say things that are inflammatory and try to earn votes and all of that other stuff. My job up here is to do what's in the best interest for our students first, and our staff and our teachers and our community. And I'm doing the best that I can. And I'd like to think that all of the other board members are too. Thank you.
Mrs. Ordway, board report. No, you have already had your opportunity. And it's now Mrs. Ordway's time.
Referencing something that
It
is
doesn't-
not accurate.
It-
The post I have right
Mrs.
here,
Fisher,
it does
it
not
is
accuse the
not,
board.
it is not your turn to speak right now. It is Mrs. Ordway's turn to speak, and
I-
she did not use your name.
We all
She
know
did-
who she's talking about. The post does not say the board
Mrs.
supports.
Fisher, you have had your opportunity. It is
Ryan.
Mrs. Ordway's turn for her board report.
Either
This is
way.
not public comment. You were not called
This
out
was
by a
slander.
parent. It was not.
It was not.
No,
The board
it
that
was
accused
not.
that, and that is what these people believe.
Mrs. Fisher,
Because you refuse to allow anyone to have actual conversation about anything.
you know what? We are going to have a conversation about this very topic at your and the two other board members' requests to talk about how we behave, how we treat each other, and how we talk about each other. And I look forward to it. Trust me, it will be a wonderful conversation
I
to
do hope
discuss
so.
social media and how we treat each other and what we say about each other.
And putting personal people's information out to others and whatnot. I hope so.
Oh, that would be a wonderful conversation. Mrs. Ordway, it's your turn for a board report.
I am the lucky one. The groundbreaking was so important to see the students that are going to welcome the students that are going to be in that school. And we have one of the students here that you are on the Talon, correct? And did do the photographs, so that was awesome. And tonight he's here just as himself. So in spite of and despite the parameters that we have to go about the district with students Our kids are still thriving. Hopefully, we can cut those quarantines down so more of them can thrive on a daily basis. I do think that there's a lot of social media out there, and I do look forward to the work session that we're going to have. There are people on social media that put out incorrect, misleading, misguided, and absolutely untrue statements about our district and certain members, so I do look forward to the opportunity to have all of that cleared up. I think we've got football games this Friday and Thursday. Do we have, what else do we have besides football or in addition to football? Do we have
Volleyball,
badminton now?
badminton.
Volleyball and badminton, right? So we've got a lot of balls in the air, and these are the kind of balls that we like to juggle because it's what makes kids tick. Oh, and swimming. Oh, I was at the pool with some of the girls. Swim. Noticed that. So anyway, we're ticking, and to the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the principals, the deans, the students, hopefully the plant foreman and forewomen that we can hire, all of our employees. I appreciate so much helping during this time, and the parents too. Positive outlook for your kids is going to bring us through this better. Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. I too attended the groundbreaking, and it was wonderful to have all the students from Sandra Day O'Connor there, the band, the mascot, the Talon, the student body president, as well as I think more community members than I've ever seen out. Out at a groundbreaking, and I think that's possibly because they've probably waited the longest to get their school. So it was an exciting day to be a part of. So I look forward to when we get to open that school next, well, I guess not next, it's this coming August. That makes me a little sad. The year's going quickly. It was a great event. I also got to attend one of Mr. Miglerino's favorite events, and that was a boundary meeting. And I love that Mr. Miglerino always injects humor. He did a little trivia because there were lots of folks there early, so he was trying to entertain us and find out how much we knew about Sandra Day O'Connor High School. So that was a good job. We had about, I think, 9 or 10 folks there, so, and a couple of kids too, so that was nice. I look forward to hearing more about the Boundary Initiative due to our new school, and I don't know if it will also be impacted by numbers that we have, our growing numbers. It's an exciting problem to have as we have TSMC and all the rooftops that are coming so that we can house the 1,900 employees and their families that will be coming our way. I want to hit on a couple of other topics, and one is that it is important that when things happen to our students, that we report them. There is a hotline number, I believe, and please, I'm looking for heads to shake on our high schoolers have it on their IDs, which they wear and must have with them every day. And if we don't have that on our junior high kiddos, I hope we would incorporate that in the future for them to have, but make sure that all of our students and parents know there is that hotline number for reporting. The truth is if we don't come forward and identify the problem and the situation, there really isn't a way for our staff to move forward. I think that there's not a parent alive that doesn't have a student that hasn't encountered some kind of trouble or issues in school, and we cannot solve it if we don't talk to our teacher or a principal or whichever adult in the district you are comfortable going with. And it is not always comfortable, and I know that because I did it a few times with my students. We don't always necessarily get the resolution we're specifically looking for, but it is important for us to go through the process and figure out how to teach our kids to be more resilient and strong and give them coping skills and teach them how to learn to deal with situations. That is important, but you must come forward and talk to an adult or report it on a hotline or send an email. In addition, I want to assure that our agendas are posted usually by the Friday or Saturday prior to the meeting, which is well before the statutorily required 24-hour time frame. All of the items on there can be seen by the public. That's the purpose of that. Consent agenda items are not hidden. They are also visible on the agenda. You can click on the agenda item and you can click on the links to the policy or the presentation. And much like occurred 2 weeks ago at this meeting, or at a regular governing board meeting, is we had a parent or two, or I should just say public speakers, come and request that an item be pulled from the consent agenda so it could be addressed separately. So that does work, because after listening to them, then I requested it be pulled. You can contact a board member or a board member. Mrs. Fisher. Could you please not interrupt my board report? No one doesn't interrupt your board report. So if there is a question from the community, or they would like to have something further addressed, please let us know. Please come speak. We encourage civil discourse, and we do want to hear from our community. Finally, Mrs. Taylor, if you could please send out a request for us to schedule the executive session as requested at the last meeting, as well as the additional session to talk about social media and how we work together. Yeah, find us a date and we'll label it accordingly. And with that, I will note that we have a superintendent's report. Sorry, I almost forgot you.
That's all right. I'm interested in Mr. Merguino's comedy act. I didn't know about this. I hope I can get the tape on that one. Probably, maybe on YouTube. He does know the history around here, so yes, we do enjoy that history. Gives us perspective, too, on how we become what we have over time. A couple things that board members have talked about, I'll hit as well, but one thing I wanted to draw attention to is the Professional Learning Community Award for Mountain Shadows, becoming a model school, model PLC school. That's a big deal. We were over there and handed out their flag and got some pictures, and we'll be doing a presentation here as well in the future in the boardroom, hopefully in concert with our Project Momentum as well. I think I see Dr. Tuna shaking her head, so I think that's in the works. Both of those obviously are a big part of the Deer Valley machine as we march to number one. I think Ms. Reed mentioned the legislature. Have you been reading in the last 48 hours? Judge ruled those additions to the budget were unconstitutional. I'm assuming this will be appealed as well. That part I want to add to you or let you know that we are working with our lawyers to find out the impact on board policy, if they're going to put us in a stall mode or if they're going to continue to press forward. And so I'll keep you in the loop via Friday update what's happening there as soon as I learn more about that as well. Lots of articles being written about it and different lawyers weighing in, but nothing particular from our lawyers yet. And lastly, but not least, in our previous meeting here, we had about 2 hours ago, Dr. Joanne Swarning won Principal of the Year last year. Got some treats. I don't know if she got a new car out of that or no? No car? Oh, she got a certificate and a 3D printer. You know, I didn't hear about that, but she did win a prize dollars from which group is it? McCarthy, that's right. So we want to thank McCarthy for sponsoring that. They've sponsored that many years, and we. So congratulations to Dr. Joanne Swarting. Thanks.
And with the conclusion of Dr. Finch's report, I will make a reminder that our future meeting dates are posted. In addition, a quick reminder that our October meeting is actually on Wednesday, October 13th. So please make a note in your calendar. That's a little bit different for us. And I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oh, any